It is time to tackle the next step in my project to recreate a costume from the British Bronze Age. So at the end of the last video, I had bought my fabric, which is here, my white linen sheets. And in this video, it's time to experiment with some natural dyeing to see if I can get some vaguely historically appropriate colours for my costume. So, I have done my research. I do know that we do not have any evidence of clothing being dyed in Britain or Northern Europe during the Bronze Age. The British Bronze Age is 2500 to 800 BCE. We do, however, have examples of dyed clothing from other parts of the world in that period, so we're using a little bit of artistic license, largely because this is a costume that is being worn at a public event with the sole purpose of engaging the general public. The client wants it to be bright and colourful and fun. So I'm going to try and achieve a similar red colour to the clothing found on these mummies in China using, hopefully, madder roots. I have done some dyeing before, but my experience is quite limited. And certainly I've never done anything with natural dyeing and natural dye stuffs. I also have a whole load of extra complications to do with my health and the fact I don't have any of the appropriate equipment. So this is by no means a tutorial, it is by no means an archaeological experiment or any of that. It's me having fun. So I thought I would show you what I've bought. First of all, I've bought these two books, and I bought two books from the same author, largely because this one is called A Heritage of Colour, and it's a lot about the sort of history of dyeing, particularly things like native plants to Britain. So that has been useful in terms of my research into like historical dyeing. And this is a sort of beginner's guide, if you like. And the reason why I was drawn to the work of this particular dyer and this guide was because there is a method in here to dye fabric without heat. I'll come back to that. Now, because I'm still in like the experimental phase, what I did was buy a kit. This is from DT Craft and Design. This is also where I bought my books as well. Details will also be in the description. And so, as part of this kit, we get madder root, logwood chips, goldenrod, and cochineal bugs. We also get mordants for plant and animal fibres. We get some colour modifiers, and we get safety equipment. So, this is the madder. The smell that comes off this as well. So I believe goldenrod you get yellow colours, and logwood you get sort of, you can get like black, I think. And then I've always wondered what cochineal bugs actually look like. Look at that. Wow. I mean, they're so dried, they don't really look like a bug anymore, but fascinating. And so then the chemicals we have, first of all, the mordants. So the mordants are used to pre-treat the fabric, and this can enhance the colour that you get. It sort of helps the dye bond to the fibres of the cloth or the yarn or whatever that you're dyeing. So they're sort of like a pre-treatment. And then this is ferrous sulfate. This is what they call a colour modifier, and I believe you soak your dyed goods in this and various other things, and you can get the colour to change. So it might change shade, it might change completely. It's really sort of like magic and witchcraft, this, isn't it? I don't really know what I'm doing. And there's a part of me that's very nervous. I have bought some equipment, because obviously you can't use like your kitchen equipment for dyeing because the stuff is toxic, so. Oops. I've bought the biggest pot I could find. This was sold as like a pickling or preserving jar or something. Have a sieve. This was on the list of things you needed. I've also got like various old wooden spoons and things like that. Oh, I've also got a plastic tub. Usually holds my yarn stash. There is still some bits in there that I need to clear out. Part of the reason I'm so nervous is because of the limitations of my disability, because I don't usually use the stove at all, ever. It's just not safe. It's just not safe for me. So the idea of having to stand over an enormous pan that is too heavy for me to hold really when it's empty. The idea of this being full of scalding hot liquid that could spill everywhere, ruin the entire house, we would definitely not be getting the security deposit back. It's kind of terrifying. And so while I've bought my big pot, I actually don't think I'm going to use it. I think instead I'm going to use a cold water method that's described in this book, which is essentially you put your dye stuff and your fabric in a pot that's big enough for it all to move around, and you leave it for several days, and that's all you do. I think that's possibly going to be the safest for me, and like the one that I'm most confident with. I'm also going to suggest that it's kind of historically accurate. I don't really know, but because there's no evidence of dyed garments in the Bronze Age that survived, and yet there is in the Iron Age, which is like, we could be talking like a few hundred years difference here, right? There must have been a transition period. It's not like the calendar turned to 799 BCE and suddenly everybody dyed their clothes and knew how to make iron, right? There must have been a transition period. So that means there must have been a time where people were like putting things in a pot and hoping for the best. So while like my methods and equipment may not be accurate, maybe my attitude is. I don't know, that's probably just like an art school lie that I'm telling myself to make me feel better, but I think that's the approach I'm going to take. The other thing is that this is 100 grams of madder. I have like nearly 2 kilos of fabric to dye, and according to the guides that I have, you need approximately a 1-to-1 ratio, so 100 grams of madder will dye 100 grams of fabric to a medium colour. So I'm either going to get a really light shade, or it's not going to work at all. The other thing that Jenny, the author of my guides, reassures me is that you can, if you don't get the colour you want the first time, you can keep over dyeing it. So if I have to buy more madder and do this again, or if I'm able to do like first round without any heat, if I then have to do a second round where I get somebody to help me and come and help with that, at least then I'll have made a start. Does that make sense? I'm a little bit stressed and starting to regret taking this on, but anyway, it's irrelevant because first of all, I need to double check all my measurements to make sure that I am dyeing enough fabric. It needs to be scoured, as in washed. There are ways that you do this, boiling it up on the stove for hours. I have a 90-degree setting on my washing machine. I'm just going to wash it in the washing machine. And then even before we think about dyeing, the fabric has to be mordanted. So that's these chemical pre-treatments. And I believe for plant fibers, which my linen is, I need this one. It says in the guide, in the instructions, this should be enough to mordant a kilo of plant fiber. So I need to double check all my ratios and stuff. But before anything else, I just need to double check everything. Oh my God, this is actually happening. We're actually doing it. Okay. Step 1 is wash the fabric. I know how to do that at least, so let's get going. Okay, let's weigh it and see how much we're actually dealing with. 815 grams-ish. I'm actually going to overlock those raw edges just because this frayed quite a lot as I ripped it, which means a trip up the stairs. Overlocking done. In you go. Good luck. Basically, I now have to fill this with enough water to cover my goods and dissolve this in it, which, given that I can't get that under the sink and then carry it, it's going to take me a fucking age to do it with a jug this size. Fucking hell. I'm using hot water out of the tap just to speed things up a touch. But obviously I don't want to do anything hotter than that because switch to 2 plastic pots just because they're lighter. compromising safety. This is like... Never mind the ziploc aspect of it. Yeah, I thought that might happen. Well, we're using the whole packet anyway. Here goes. I thought this was going to be a Sharpie. First bit of fabric going in. I think I need a little more water in there. Just going to move those a bit further away so you can hear me. It says, slowly heat goods, bringing to a simmering point over 30 to 45 minutes, then simmer for a further 45 to 60 minutes. Just in case. It's an hour and a half later. Hang on. It's an hour and a half later, and this only has just reached like simmering point. And I've just turned it off. I mean, I'm not boiling this for another hour, simmering it for another hour. That's ridiculous. So, also I've burnt myself so many times on this lid. I'm just gonna leave it until it cools down, and then I'm gonna get Woody to move it, and I'm gonna leave it outside overnight. It's probably too cold for it, but I don't care. It says to leave the fibres to soak in there anyway. I should put that somewhere so that Woody doesn't actually accidentally use it. Yeah. What the hell? So glad I'm not like a 1950s housewife having to boil up nappies. I had a stroke of genius as I was overlocking the raw edges of the fabrics. They didn't fray. And I made myself a little, this is just dress net. Can you see that? Made myself a little net bag to put my bits of madder in. So I'm essentially going to make like a madder tea bag. And then I'm going to put an elastic band around the top. And then hopefully you get my gist. My feet hurt. I'm exhausted. I'm terrified about poisoning myself. This is a lot less fun than I thought it would be. So, day 2, here we are. The very first thing I did this morning was go outside and fill up the 62-litre storage box that I have with water from the outside tap. The reason I did that first thing was because the water from the outside tap is very cold, and I'm hoping we'll get some like solar heating going on. I could also try and boil the kettle and put some boiling water in just to raise the temperature up a bit before we put everything in, because that will hopefully help with the like stewing of the dye stuffs. Left my fabric in the mordant overnight. To say it took like 2 hours to heat up, it took like 10 hours to cool down. It was still hot when I was going to bed. And it's like, it's still slightly warm to touch this morning. First of all, I've got to empty this and rinse the fabric. Now, it says in the instructions this can go down the drain. Well, in the instructions it says most mordants can go down the drain if well diluted. For somebody that needs specifics like me and who is very anxious, I'm like, so the mordant you gave me in the kit specifically, is that in the most mordants category? And also, well diluted, you know, we've got like 20 litres of water in here for 25 grams of stuff. Is that well diluted? Or do I need to also run the tap while I'm doing this? I don't know. So I'm a bit nervous about that. But also, I can't lift this. So I can't even like move it forward really. It's so heavy. And so the only way I'm really going to be able to empty it is the same way I filled it up, which is dipping my plastic pot in and carrying it to the sink. So that's going to be a laborious start to the morning. But then essentially we chuck everything in and we leave it. There's a part of me that does really want to try and dye some yarn as well. So I'll have to scour the wool that I want to dye. So I need this pot for that, and then we'll do the mordanting all over again. Okay, sometimes there's nothing for it. Let's just get to it. This is where like a high wheelie stool would be a dream. dad bought me this for my birthday. So I can do a little bit of gardening. So, first things first. According to my instructions, madder likes alkali, so we're adding bicarb of soda. I'm not gonna measure it, and I'm not doing like alkali extraction or whatever. Just there we go. That'll do. Got my madder. I've got my net. Thought I'd do it over the bucket. Just in case I drop any or any falls out. So I've got my elastic band to tie it up. Thought that might happen. Oh, can you see that? The water is going red. Wow, that was instant. Okay, I'm going to drop it in. Wasn't expecting that to float, but there we are. And then, oh, I brought them in the pot. Oh God, that's heavy. Oh, I've got the spoon. Wait there. Okay, here we go. So, the science here, as far as I can tell. So one of the reasons why this works for madder and not other types of natural dye is that madder doesn't like heat. Here we go, it's going in. And so if you heat madder, you get a very brown shade. I just have to wait now, I think. I've got the yarn, the wool yarn scouring, as in boiling up with some washing up liquid. I used my 2-ply lamb's wool cone, just because I have loads of this and it's a neutral colour. And also I'm hoping I can use this to do some tablet weaving, and you need quite fine yarns for tablet weaving, so it'd be nice to have some coloured ones to play with. And then I have this, as you can see, this was a ball of merino that I got in a charity shop. It's either had them off, or more likely, when I first met Woody, he wanted to learn to knit, so I gave this to him, and I think Sagan was still a puppy at the time, and I think Sagan might have mistaken it for a ball, and so it's all tangled and in bits. So I've done my best to unwind a decent chunk of it. This is me like, let's just play. You know, yesterday I said I really didn't have fun. I didn't. It was tiring, it was painful, I was footsore by the end of it, and it seemed like a lot of work for not anything to happen. Of course, it's always like that in the stages of preparation. Now I've got like madder stewing in the garden, and I can, like, it's already a little bit pink. Now I'm excited. Do you know what I mean? So that's nice. Needless to say, I don't think I'll be becoming a yarn dyer anytime soon. So it's been over a week, and this is where we've gotten to, and you can see that this has gone quite orange. Not the fabric itself. If anything, I do want it to be rusty, as opposed to like, I want it to be brick as opposed to scarlet. But I'm going to put a bit more washing soda in to try and stop it fermenting any further. Oh, massive amount of room for liquid. I'm still impressed that this worked. It's going to be quite patchy though, but oh well. I'll add to the rustic effect. So, more madder has arrived. This is 500 grams. So that will give me 600 grams total madder that I have dyed this fabric with, which is not quite enough. But this was £32 and like spending £70 just to dye fabric, it was not on the cards. It's just not feasible. So it's nearly the end of March, and so I'm running out of time quite quickly on this project, and so I don't really have time to leave the fabric to dye for another 7 days or so. So I think I'm going to help it along a little bit by doing a heat extraction sort of method. Essentially, I'm going to put my madder in one of my organza bags from Wool Warehouse from when I've bought yarn, boil it up so that it's kind of more concentrated, and then put the mesh bag with all the madder in and the dye in the pot and leave it hopefully 1 or 2 days until it's deep enough. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, do you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it that way. It'll be fine. I've got a little bit of washing soda in the bottom of that. I've got as much boiling water as I can hold. Where have I put the madder? The reason I'm using such a big bag is because it expands. So I've got this here. I've left my wooden spoon outside. This is, I can still pick this up. It's heavy, but I can still pick it up. It's about maybe like 6 litres of water in here. So I can just about hold it. So what I'm going to do is simmer this for 30 minutes, let it cool as it is, so that then I can safely carry the pot out into the garden. And hopefully that will just mean we've got some like warmish water going in there, which will help with the dye process as well. And this will be really concentrated red, like you can see already at the sides. But that is, or like, you look at over the ribbons. Yeah, it's going to be red. Okay. I've not got my kneeler because it's starting to drizzle. But let's have a look. First of all, oh, that's heavy. Ooh. Straight in with that. Stirry, stirry, stirry. Oh yeah. Okay. And let's tip in the extra liquid. Probably shouldn't have tipped it directly onto the fabric. But oh well, let's just give it all a good stir. I had a realisation the other day that I don't have any thread to sew this with. So this is linen thread. So I'm going to make like a skein of linen thread and chuck it in the dye bath and hope that I've got enough to do some hand sewing. I'm probably going to have to scour this thread, aren't I? I saw a thing which was like you can do it in the microwave, so I might try that. Oh, I should have done the loops. It's in the microwave. I just put it in a dish with some fairy liquid and I'm microwaving it for 5 minutes. It says to do it for a total of half an hour in 5-minute chunks. Okay, I'll try it and see what happens.
Hello. It's quite windy. It's been about 3 days since I put the next batch of dye in. We have had some deepening of the colour. Like, I think that is red now. It's still quite pink. So my plan is to try and apply some heat. Apparently, heat and madder, you have to do it very slowly. Well, that's fine. As we've seen, it takes an age for this pot to heat up. So what I think I'm going to do is put a little bit of the dye liquid in the pot with one of the bits to begin with. The smaller one probably would be better, which I think is the other one to the one that I'm currently holding. I mean, it's quite an intense sort of colour, isn't it? Yeah, it's the other one. This one. So this might be unnecessary, but I kind of want to give it a go for the sake of the experiment, really. Are you ready? Now I'm going to have to spend for bleeding ever doing this. Am I going to be able to pick this up? Okay. What else I'm curious about is I put the yarn in. The yarn's gone kind of orange. That's interesting. But I'm also looking for my thread. Ah, there it is. Oh, the thread! Look at that, because that's got no mordant on at all. That's quite good. Can you see that? It's like a little worm. Let's put that on there. Going to need that. Back inside. I'm at the point now where I just am going to have to cool it and dry this fabric and rinse it and dry it on the line. Because I'm running out of time. It's the 31st of March and this costume has to be finished and delivered to the client before Beltane on the 1st of May. So, oh my god. That was heavy. I committed, forgot what I was doing. This is what we ended up with from boiling it. I think it's quite good. So, I'm going to stick that in there. There's some yarn as well in the bottom of here. Oh, the yarn's gone very dark. That's exciting. Oh, I think that was the brown yarn to begin with. I'm just going to let that drain out. I'm going to save the dye and put it in the pot outside and bring the fabric in from the pot outside in the pot. First of all, oh, there is a slight difference in colour compared from the one that got boiled and the one that didn't. Now, let's see once we start rinsing. Look at all my beautiful red fabric. So glad I spent like £100 on stuff and dedicated 2 weeks of my life to this project. I'm partly joking. It was a good experience, I suppose, but I am very disappointed with the results. When I looked back at the footage to see just how red this looked, I expected it to get a bit paler, but this is just so annoying. After rinsing it thoroughly in the sink,
and seeing it get a bit paler and seeing that it was still shedding dye. I had to cool it in terms of energy and pain and stuff, and I was like, okay, I can't stand over this sink any longer. I'm just going to shove it in the washing machine. So I rinsed it in the washing machine. My logic being, it's going to need to be machine washable anyway, so like I do need to kind of test that, if nothing else. And I don't really know entirely what I've done wrong. The only thing I can think is that I didn't have enough alum. It seems that this issue with the dye taking is specific to the linen. So this section here was the one that I just left in the plastic tub. This is the one that I boiled up, made it paler. And the one at the very back there that you can just see is slightly off-white. That was unmordanted fabric that I just chucked in for a few days to see what would happen. So the mordant made hardly any difference to the way that the dye took to the fabric. So I can only conclude that I did it wrong, or I didn't use enough mordant, or there's something particular about linen or this kind of linen that meant it didn't work. Because if you look behind me, because this was the merino. The one I showed you where I thought the dog had got it and chewed the outside. Admittedly, it was brown to begin with, so that's why it's quite brown, but it took the dye really well. And it was I only chucked it in at the last minute when I was boiling this one up. So it was like in the dye bath for maybe like an hour's simmering and then overnight, compared to like 3 weeks in cold water, not quite 3 weeks, for some of the other pieces. And there was a part of me that like when this happened, I was like, maybe it's the madder. I sort of did like a little bit of like going through all the variables to try and identify what the issue was. And so I thought, well, I'll try some of the other dye stuffs that came in the kit to see whether it's something to do with the madder specifically, or the madders that I bought. Would the different dye stuffs that came with the kit produce a similarly disappointing result? And the answer is no, because this was the goldenrod. Bright yellow. Really, really bright. Admittedly, I didn't put this through the washing machine, I just rinsed it. This was what I was expecting, this sort of depth of colour. And so this leaves me in a tricky position because it's the 1st of April. That means I have a month less than to complete this commission for my client, who needs it by the 1st of May. While these results might be authentic to my sort of like experimental archaeology philosophy of chucking it in a pot and seeing what happens, like they might have done in the Bronze Age, it doesn't fit the brief. It's not what the client asked for. So I feel very much like I'm throwing good money after bad here, or at least good energy after bad, because I need to make this costume. I need something. So what I've decided to do, I have ordered some linen fabric from a specialist supplier called Hertz Specialist Fabrics, I think it is. Some linen and some wool fabric that is madder red that will be appropriate to make a costume of this kind. However, they only ship out on a Monday, and next Monday is Easter Monday. Nearly said Ooster. Is Easter Monday, and that means the post is going to be a little messed up. And that would leave me maybe a week maximum to get this project finished. And given how unpredictable my health is, that's just not a good solution. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to work with the fabric that I currently have and sew it up into some garments. Sort of like a toile, almost. And then once I have something, I can either try and naturally dye it again, increasing the mordant, reusing things that I already have. If I have to buy more madder, I have to buy more madder. If I have to throw another £70 after this. But alternatively, I can just buy commercial dye and dye it in the washing machine or in the stovetop with RIT or something like that to get a sort of a vaguely appropriate colour. Even if it's not historically accurate, at least it will look the right colour. Because I think you can agree that natural dyeing, for whatever reason, has not worked for me. This is where I need your help. I need you to tell me what I did wrong. Because as frustrating as this was in many ways, I'm kind of a little bit hooked, especially with the yarn. I mean, I think it must be something to do with the nature of the fibres, and that's why wool is more successful. I've seen a lot of people who do natural dyeing, they tend to almost exclusively do wool or protein fibres as opposed to plant fibres. Plant fibres are sort of known to be more difficult. But I refuse to be defeated, and I think there's just been
it's just been really exciting for me. And I think that's part of the reason why I feel so disappointed, is that I know there's a part of me that would love this. If I had more energy, if I had more space and I had more equipment, like, I could definitely do more natural dyeing. I love the combination of, like, it's the almost sensory, the smells, the magic, the alchemy of it is really intoxicating to me, to the point that I'm like, maybe I'll plant my own madder in the garden. Apparently it takes like 4 years to be viable, so maybe not a good idea in rented accommodation. But yeah, some other things, maybe some marigolds or something. Yeah, I can already feel like the synapses firing and the inspiration coming to me, which, oh God, there's a part of me that's like, oh no, girl, don't do it to yourself, because it was also a lot of hard work. And the results are variable. So I need to know, what have I done wrong? Please let me know in the comments. And I suppose it's time to accept defeat for now and try and do some actual sewing. Thanks for watching. See you next time.